Welcome back to Block TV. It's time for Trader's Take. The crypto markets are showing red across the board, with Bitcoin down around 5% on the day. To help us understand where we are and where we may be going, I'm joined from New York by Block TV technical analyst Joe Saz. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Oran, how are you?
I'm great. It's good to have you on, especially on a day like today. What is going on?
Yeah, what's going on is a good question. Basically, to make a long story short, we're breaking down pretty violently, and let's jump into the charts and see what's going on here with some visuals. So we had this ascending triangle breakout. We discussed this, and it happened. We had a little bit of follow through, and then we had some volatility. Right, this is where a lot of people were getting chopped up, but it looks like we had some really good, I'm trying to zoom in here, some really good sequential action. Some, as an indicator, the sequential indicator was giving us a lot of insight. I mean, it was a great time to trade if you were catching these nines and riding them out a little bit, especially stuff like this. This one would have been scary. But, we had a perfect 9 sell here, and we just ran right into the ground. Breaking out of this ascending triangle and then now breaking back well beneath the top of it, and let's see where we are. We're getting closer to where it all started, and not to mention the volume. This is looking pretty bad right now for the wider picture. There's a couple of other things going on. The order book is very illiquid right now. I'm going to share some order book activity just so people can see what I mean.
But wait, while you pull everything up, my question is this: the general question here seems to be manipulation or organic activity. What are we saying is going on here?
So I do believe that this is slightly organic. Remember what I said, that when the manipulation kind of ended, that I believed that the swings would be more to the downside with organic market activity. I do believe that that's what's going on, especially when the East Coast woke up to $10,200 Bitcoin. They had panicked, and so I woke up at whatever a.m., saw that we were looking pretty bad, and I was just like, that by 9 a.m. this thing's going to be looking terrible. And that's kind of when people are waking up, getting ready to go to work and stuff. Most people can't really trade all day every day. So I had a feeling this would just accelerate, and here we are breaking back into 9Ks. Every time we leave 9K and head into 5 figures, there's always we're never going to 9K again. This is the last visit to 9K. And so I'm just like, guys, you got to realize, the question is, where's the money been coming from? And we see that Bitcoin dominance might have something to do with it. An exodus from altcoins definitely on the table. 2018 money that was put aside to report crypto losses against stock gains, absolutely a part of this. And a huge part of it, in my honest opinion, which I've been very vocal about, is tether manipulation. And then we had the judge just the other day say that the New York Attorney General can continue to their investigation, their criminal investigation into iFinex, the parent company of both Bitfinex and US dollar tether. So that was kind of like my indicator, so to say, that things are going to start getting bad. That they don't really have a 90-day, that full 90-day extension where they could have been, sipping champagne and printing tethers. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that now it's time for them to probably fall back into the shadows a bit more, try to cover their tracks, and then let the market organically do what it was going to do, which is crash after a parabolic run-up, which we've seen so many times. And so if this is a surprise to anyone, they need to check themselves. I'm just so sick and tired of dealing with all these Bitcoin bulls right now, because anyone that thinks you jump out of a bear market into a 300% uptrend, or from bottom to top, even more than that, it's just it's ridiculous to me. So I just think we've been asking, where's the money coming from? No one else has, and everyone's just been celebrating this bull run, and I think it's not going to end violently just yet. I still think that with Bitcoin, there's 2 things that other assets don't have: a love of this relationship, investor-asset relationship, like hope. This is such a hopeful asset. Again, politically and economically, the implications are massive of the success of an asset like this. There's every reason to be hopeful, but hopefulness and hodling are the 2 things that are going to make this process long and drawn out versus a tearing off of the Band-Aid. Like, let's say when it was discovered asbestos caused cancer, right? It crashed, like the asbestos market crashed. Well, when it's discovered that Bitcoin is being completely manipulated, no one really cares. You know, it's just like, oh, it's being manipulated to the upside. At least I'm making money, and every other hodler is. So we're going to be cool with that for now. So that's kind of my mentality there. But you know, back to the charts. This is what I mean about liquidity. It's very, very thin. We have no support on any end here. I mean, the next support is the next significant wall is a buy wall at 9,500, 221 Bitcoin. And as you can see, we have no liquidity on the sell side, which means sellers are pushing the price down. They're fighting, they're competing against each other to keep their orders in the books and to keep sellers from gaining any momentum to the upside. I think we're just snuffing out the buyers, and this is just going to continue to get aggravated until we find some sort of bullish territory. And where is that? Let's take a quick look. I think this line is kind of some support. I'm trying, like, again, my fingers must not be like warm enough or something because I'm not zooming out properly on my scroll pad here. All right, so we have some support at this line. This has kind of been like an old line. This is horizontal support, which in a way is kind of a trendless environment. But I'm not really looking at this as support. I'm more expecting this all just to break down pretty violently into the lower.
Do you have kind of a theory into how low we're going to go? Because Socrates kind of is looking at who we speak to, known by his Twitter handle, obviously, an analyst. He was aiming for 87.75.
Yeah, I think that's a good target. I think 9K is going to be hard to break. I'm a reevaluator more so than a straight up price target. I would rather be constantly reevaluating my beliefs. And so, I mean, judging by this candle, it looks like we're approaching 9K with velocity, which is going to be terrible for whatever support we have in that region. And so this is what was going on too. I mean, we had this tiny close above the 50 MA, and then we had resistance against it, and you can't see it, but we closed like, you know, a millimeter below the 50 MA, and then we shot way the heck down. No chance. And so, you know, is Socrates' target pretty good? It's definitely looking good to me. I would absolutely agree it's on the table, but I want to see how we act at in the low 9Ks first, because keep in mind what I was just explaining, that Bitcoin has this tendency to it has a lot of hope associated with it. I think people are willing to fight to keep it, and not to mention, of course, there's going to be some sort of whale pump at some point in time. It's a coin flip. When's it going to be? I think it's going to be when it can, you know, do the most damage to shorts, right? And I'm assuming it's going to be somewhere in the vicinity of the low 9,000s, probably 9,200 or 9,100 or something like that, where we'll probably see a small reversal in the trend. But, you know, I think I think his target's looking great right now, especially with that big red candle headed right down after rejection from the 50 MA, and a failure to be the same way that that we've been reacting to the 50 MA on both sides of the spectrum. So here's the 50 moving average, this orange line. When we broke beneath it, this one was like the first time we wrestled, but then when we got above it, we violently broke out, right? Supported. You know, a couple of these wicks were kind of rejecting the lower price action, broke beneath it, you know, fell beneath it, and we had a little bit more violent selling action relative to the previous price action, right, around here. So you can see that we had the same thing happen up here. We had a pretty serious move to the upside and a rejection at the 50 MA, and then an extremely violent response to it, very similar to how we respond every time we break beneath it. Well, not every time, but, you know, locally, on the local time scale speaking, that's what's going on. So I just think that the more that we continue to get beneath this 50 MA, I'm going to add to this that part of the thing is the other altcoins have responded to the 50 MA much more violently. So what this means is we've wrestled with it a number of times now, and now I firmly believe that we are going to be sitting beneath it for quite some time. Now, there's still potential for us to be bouncing and jiggling through that descending triangle I just drew right here. and that's because what we were just discussing with all the hope. It's very possible that we hit this low 9K and we pop back up a little bit, hit, maybe 11.4. But, it's just, we got to see, we got to reevaluate because, again, 70% Bitcoin dominance is now a fact, and pretty stable holding. I just don't think there's too much money coming in from the outside other than people already in the community. So if that's dried up and sellers are starting to get scared, or traders are starting to get scared, then I think there's nothing that's going to really stop this from a price discovery that is pretty disgusting looking. I'm talking big red candles to the downside.
Right, I was going to add, just like you said, nevertheless, even with all the pessimism and the market going down at this point, Bitcoin is still holding steady with 70% dominance on the market. So that there is something to say in that regard. But kind of shifting gears, so we have this news of Binance with Venus. And I want to kind of look into BNB, how that's affecting that, because we know that when Bitcoin is affected and goes down, the rest of the market's kind of going down with it. What's going on with BNB, both with that news and with the fact that Bitcoin is kind of going down at this point?
All right, let's see. This should, I'm just going to switch this. Nope, that's the wrong one. All right, just give me a sec here. Where is my BNB chart? Here we go. Binance relative to Bitcoin, we're actually not looking... we're looking kind of bad. We're all right. There's two things that I see here. I see a distinct lower high, and a little bit of support here. So it's a little bit. I'm not resting too much weight on this, by the way. But we definitely have a lower local low. Some people would look at this as more of a channel type scenario, and say that it's possible that we've entered a channel here. I think it's definitely a pretty compelling argument in both ways. I don't like lower lows. If I'm a bull for an asset, I don't like lower lows. What this looks like is nothing significant has happened as a result of this announcement, and further we can extrapolate from that information that we really have a very small group of people acting in the space right now, and that should tell us that that the money's drying out. I think everything is up for grabs. Now, let's just take a quick at BNB relative to US dollar. I mean, not that it matters too much, but we're actually looking kind of bearish there too. We're at a nice little support area. Again, I don't like assets that have all these wild swings like every day. I mean, this is crazy. Spinning top of, like, this is just insane, absolutely insane. And I really only see that also with Tron, TRX. But I mean, to go technical, we're now a bearish crossover on the 50-125, the short and intermediate term moving averages. We're probably a couple weeks, maybe a week or two away from the intermediate term average trending down. We might have some support at the 200 moving average, so around 20-something dollars, low $20, 23 or so. But I don't know. We've been trading so far away from it. I'm not 100% sure. We're just going to shake hands when we get there with the 200 MA. So relative to the external variables that could be causing activity with that particular asset, I don't see any bullishness. And again, we have Bitcoin dominance. You know what? I'm just going to check something real quick. I'm going to see if we can do this. If we can't do it, then that's it. All right, here's the dominance. We're at 1.62 dominance compared to BTC.D, which is Bitcoin market cap dominance, and we're at let's see lines here. So I mean, Bitcoin's at 70.1%. 0.01% dominance, and BNB is at 1.62%. I mean, this thing, it looks like it's gone up a tiny bit with this small down move. So I don't know. I'm not very optimistic here, but BNB is on the low end of dominance. I mean, Ethereum, XRP. I mean, we have a number of altcoins that are performing much better, like 7.76 market cap dominance for Ethereum. So BNB just isn't really looking good to me. They haven't really taken any additional market cap out of other altcoins here.
Right, which is actually pretty interesting, right? Because Binance is really trying to kind of, I mean, they are the biggest exchange, but they're trying to up name recognition, whether it be via BNB, now Venus, changing how they operate within the US. So it's interesting to see that that's not actually coinciding with what's happening to BNB ultimately. Now, Ethereum, there's been a lot of Ethereum hate lately. A lot. People really just bashing the existence of dApps, blaming the fact that Ethereum even exists for the ICO incident, let's call it. Udi Wartimer on Twitter was really going hardcore at bashing it. But I'm wondering if that had the opposite effect, maybe some reverse psychology. People bashing Ethereum, maybe it's doing a little bit better. Doubtful. I see your face as doubting it, but can we look into it?
I'm excited. I'm always like, I don't really monitor ETH and Litecoin and stuff like that, so it's always fun to pop my head in. So just while we're here, I did type in ETH. We're at 7.76 dominance, and making a slight move to the upside with Bitcoin's downturn. But yeah, let's take a look at the actual ETH chart. Now, ETH heads have nothing to celebrate right now. We were looking at some very, very bearish activity. I mean, we were rejected by the 200, and that's kind of your last line of defense. You know what I'm saying? We already have the intermediate term, and so this is a quick drawback to what I was saying earlier. This is how this altcoin reacted to a break from the 50 MA. Now, we saw Bitcoin wrestle with it over and over, but here we have a violent breakdown. Support in the midst of the intermediate term moving average, a breakdown and a break through the long-term moving average, and then a test and a rejection of it, followed by a violent breakdown. This is looking so ugly right now. I wouldn't be very bullish on ETH right now. I wouldn't be a happy hodler, let's put it like that. But long term, let's just switch to the weekly for a second, and then we're just going to quickly look at ETH relative to BTC. Yeah, this is looking pretty ugly. We're nearing, we're supported at the 50 weekly moving average. We're coming up 2 weeks from now. We're probably going to hit a 9 buy opportunity. It looks like 9s have been, oh, look at this. I mean, 9s have been beautiful with Ethereum. The sequential indicator has been pretty spot on. So peaking out and taking a serious move to the downside. I don't expect this 9 buy in 2 weeks to be more than the 1 to 4 candle pullback like you typically see when a trend is
But would you
acting.
not consider this Ethereum pulling in higher lows?
Not yet, because we still have momentum. Not yet. I would consider higher lows, and let's where were we looking at that? It was BNB. Never mind. Like a good example of higher lows and lower highs and all that is something like this. It's kind of something that you have to look back at. You can't really make an assumption of a higher low and a lower high until it's been completed. Now that this has rounded off, I can surmise that we have created a local lower high, and we are now on our way to fighting and competing with lower lows. Now, we're competing with a very local lower low right now, and it looks like we have some momentum moving into it and some volume to justify. Interestingly enough, though, this price action is actually, the volume's pretty weak relative to this price action. But that just goes to show you, when you have these violent moves to the upside and the downside, the order book just gets it loses so much liquidity. So then all you have are just traders adding liquidity to the book, and there really probably aren't that many out there. I mean, relative to what there would be in other assets like stocks. So this would be a lower local low, or a lower local high, right? Because it's already been formed. This is a lower local high relative to here, but a higher local high relative to here. So to answer your question, we haven't yet completed the formation needed to require that assumption. You don't want to assume too much. I try not to.
So absolutely not feeling positive with what's going on with Ethereum right now, but there is kind of something to look ahead to a bit. You mentioned there. I would like to thank you very much, Joe Stas, for breaking that down for us on this very, very frustrating red day of ours. Just like the red wedding, anybody Game of Thrones fans understands, but not quite. For all of you folks out there, keep watching BLOCKTV.com for more cryptocurrency and blockchain related news.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.